Godzilla is a character who, if you were, say, 14 years old in the past, 30 years, you are probably very familiar with. Of course, the character of Godzilla has been around for much, much longer than that, with a wide array of movies spanning from very serious to absolutely ludicrous in nature. Of course, seeing as you are watching this video right now, I'm going to assume that you are much more familiar with the American Godzilla films. Like, King of the Monsters and all the modern MonsterVerse movies. However, if you didn't know, Godzilla is a Japanese creation, and with that comes a myriad of Japanese Godzilla movies. Recently, in theaters, Shin Godzilla was re-released, and I've been contemplating its existence relative to another movie that came out 2 years ago called Godzilla Minus One. These movies are kind of two sides of the same coin in terms of their subject matter and just really how they're constructed, but they're very different movies. But they're also very similar in the sense that these are very widely considered by most people to be the best Godzilla movies. Like, the two best representations of what Godzilla was originally meant to be. And I agree with that. But seeing as I am a film creator on the internet, I always have to pit two good things against each other to determine which one is better. And that is exactly what I am going to do. Welcome to the analysis of Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One relative to each other, and how similar they are, but also how different. So, Shin Godzilla was originally released in 2016, but as I mentioned previously, it was recently re-released in theaters, and I got to see it with ass warmers. So that is immediately points to Shin Godzilla, because Godzilla Minus One did not have ass warmers. Now, Shin Godzilla changes the origin story of Godzilla by just a little bit. Because rather than being created in the atomic aftermath of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki like he is in the original continuity, in the original 1954 movie, he instead is an organism that fed off of the radioactive waste that was dumped in the post-reconstruction after the bombings, which is kind of in fitting with the natural disaster metaphor that's going on here, which is really what this movie's doing, because Godzilla kind of just shows up out of nowhere. They initially think that it's just like a pipe burst underground, but then it's very quickly revealed that it was Godzilla. And the weirdest thing about this movie is that this is damn near a horror movie. This movie is fucking scary, dude. Look at this Godzilla. That's the first time you see him in this movie. This is the first look at Godzilla that you get. Yeah, right? That aside, there's also some absolutely insane conceptual stuff going on in this movie. There is a whole myriad of lore that goes beyond what is actually in this movie, as far as I understand it. There's like a whole bunch of concept art for what Shin Godzilla would become if it wasn't killed, which is further elaborated on in this shot from the very end of the movie, where Shin Godzilla is becoming many corpses. Why is he becoming many corpses? Who fucking knows, dude? Who knows? They don't explain it in the movie. Like I said, this is the last 2 seconds of the movie before the credits. This is the very end of this movie. No addressal of it. It's after they freeze him and he's dead. There are like mushrooms growing on him, and it's implying that he's still alive, I think. But yeah, just super cool artistic design all over this thing. I absolutely adore it. The movie itself is about the diplomatic response to Godzilla showing up. It follows the Prime Minister and his cabinet trying to deal with the fact that Shin Godzilla is here and he is just fucking shit up. And it's very well done. There's a real sense of urgency in this thing. Because, like, what do you do, right? What do you do as the Japanese Prime Minister when Godzilla just shows up? Right? Like, and not only when he shows up, but when he starts, like, coming on land and actually attacking stuff. And on the note of attacking stuff, that brings me to something really interesting about this Godzilla that I don't think any other movie does. And it is the idea that Godzilla himself is a victim. Right? And stay with me here. Even if you've seen the movie, you might be wondering what I mean by that. But there is a scene in this movie. It is the scene in this movie. If you've seen the movie, you know what scene I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen the movie, you probably still know what I'm talking about. Because this scene it's the scene in this movie. It's the atomic breath scene. I actually played the music from this scene earlier in the video. But it has really, like, sad lyrics that are told from the point of Godzilla. And it's about him pretty much just washing up on the shore, having no idea what's going on, and the potential of dying in this foreign place that it just doesn't understand. It doesn't understand why people are trying to kill it. It doesn't understand why everybody around it is so focused on it. It's just trying to survive. And that narrative is actually reflected in the actions that Godzilla takes throughout the movie. Because that scene with the atomic breath does not happen until Godzilla is directly harmed by the military forces in this movie. There's a scene much earlier on where, like, helicopters just fly around it, and it doesn't do anything. And then they fly away and it roars at them, and that's it. It's just wandering. You know, some of the most destruction that Godzilla causes in this movie is when it's just flopping around before it can stand up, you know, because it's like its blood is like boiling in its body because it can't stand being on land until it eventually evolves into being able to withstand being on land and being able to stand up, because that's just what this Godzilla does. You know, he just evolves over and over again. And then after he understands, like, okay, these guys are trying to fuck me up, he does the atomic breath, and then the spines out of the back. And then from there on, you know, it's hostile because it understands, like, oh my god, these people are trying to kill me. And I don't want to die. It is trying just as hard to stay alive as the humans are, and they are unable to understand each other. There's just something about that, you know, that's so cool. That's like, you know, I mean, obviously we view Godzilla as both the audience and the people in the movie as, like, oh, you know, this guy's a monster. This is the monster that's, like, destroying all of our shit. We have to kill it. Well, they're not, like, immediately, oh, we have to kill it. Certain characters are, but other characters are, like, for preservation of it. It's actually a key plot point, but not to go too far into specifics, you know. This movie is about the failure of a government to stop a natural disaster and the togetherness that people can have in the aftermath of something like that in order to amend it and make things better, you know? And it's really powerful. It's really good. The characters are really strongly written. There's a whole thing about, like, the US potentially dropping a nuke on Tokyo and the stigma around the idea of the US dropping another nuke on Japan, even though, you know, it'd be to help them get rid of Godzilla, just because of, like, the historical precedent of it. You know, it ties back into the 1954 movie really well and the origins of the character, and it's really well done. Everything is really tightly written. I don't know exactly how long this movie is, but it feels like it's probably just 2 hours. And I really appreciate what this movie does. But that being said, I don't think it does it nearly as well as Godzilla Minus One is not only one of my favorite Godzilla movies, it's one of my favorite movies at all. I think it's incredible. I think everything that it sets out to do, it does perfectly. And I really, truly, genuinely do not have a single problem with this movie. This movie, whereas Shin Godzilla focuses more on the diplomatic and bureaucratic response and the processes of Shin Godzilla arriving, this movie focuses more on what people would do. And another important distinction between this movie and Shin Godzilla is that this movie takes place immediately after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hence the title, Minus One. The tagline was that after the bombs dropped, Japan was at 0, and then Godzilla showed up, and they were at -1. I still think that's not perfect in terms of a convention for naming something, but what do I care? It's a good-ass movie. This movie follows a kamikaze pilot who fakes a malfunction in his plane so that he doesn't have to fucking kill himself, and he sees his squad get butchered by Godzilla when he's still much smaller. They're the first people to see Godzilla. Well, not the first people, but they're the first people that we see encounter Godzilla. And they all just get butchered. He's the only one who survives. And he hesitates on firing on Godzilla because he freezes up, And Godzilla himself serves as a big metaphor for survivor's guilt. They give this poor bastard triple survivor's guilt in this movie. He just gets the worst of absolutely every situation in this movie. But the point of the movie is that he continues to live in spite of that. In the whole first half of this movie, he's very I'm so pathetic, I should die, I need to die because of what I've done to everybody. But then by the end, he starts a family with this random homeless lady who has an orphaned baby on account of the bombs. They build a life together during the Godzilla attacks. And it all culminates in that scene. This movie has that scene too. The final scene, the final confrontation with Godzilla is it's the tightest I've ever gripped the armrests of a seat in a theater in my entire life. It is profound, it is powerful, and before I spoil this movie for you, go watch it. God, please go watch this movie. I love this movie so much. You need to watch this movie for yourself. Do not let me spoil it for you. But anyway, going into spoilers, they have the idea of making a kamikaze plane go into Godzilla's mouth and blow up. Or, well, he has that idea, kind of independently of everybody else. They're all trying to sink him and then bring him back up so that all the nitrogen in his body erupts and makes him explode, pretty much. And he is pretty much I'm going to kill myself, and that's going to make up for all of the deaths that I caused. Of course, he's also, I forgot to mention, he's not the only person who survived the island attack. There's another engineer, a plane engineer, who also survived, who's he fucking hates him because he hesitated and got all of their guys killed. But that guy programs in an ejector seat so that he can survive. Of course, in the scene where you're shown this for the first time, you don't know that as an audience member. You just see the plane fly into his mouth and explode. And in that moment, you think, oh my fucking god, he's dead. Literally, how could he not be dead? But then there's a shot of him flying down with a parachute, and it cuts to the engineer being like, you have to live for your wife and daughter. You cannot die just for this, preconceived notion that you deserve it, And oh my god, I'm sorry. I get emotional talking about this movie because there's a whole scene before this where he effectively sends his daughter a suicide note. Well, the lady who's taking care of his daughter, he sends a suicide note. He's like, I'm. He doesn't say it outright in the letter, but it reads very much like an, "Oh, I'm going to die. Take this money and raise my child for me, please." Because it's established prior in the film that his wife is dead. She gets killed in one of the Godzilla attacks, which of course then leads to a scene in a hospital afterwards where it reveals that she's actually alive, and they have... I'm so sorry. They have a reunion, and it's so fucking beautiful, man. It's so, like... Oh my god, dude. I think about this movie so often. The whole back half of this movie is like... This family of characters is just... And I mean, I haven't even discussed, like, the other characters that he's with, like the scientist and the ex-military guys that he's with, that he finds Godzilla with initially after the first island attack, because I find them so overshadowed by this incredibly strong, and I say the phrase emotional core constantly. I catch myself saying it literally all the goddamn time. The phrase emotional core, because I just can't phrase things in any other way. It's just what makes sense to me. It is a very strong emotional core at the very center of this movie. And it's perfect. It's perfect. There is one gripe that I have with it, and that is that it is revealed that Shin Godzilla is underwater and, like, reforming. But it's a Godzilla movie. They're gonna do that. They're gonna do the, "oh, he's not actually dead" thing. I just think that, like, it would be a perfect capstone on the end of this movie to just let him earn having his life. And there is supposed to be a Shin Godzilla sequel coming out, and I really hope it's not about the same characters, because I think that this movie starts and ends the characters' journeys perfectly. This movie's a 10 for me. I don't want whatever... I'm so open to a sequel for this movie, I don't want it to be involving the same people. Or the same characters, rather. Because I think it would really ruin everything that this movie sets up. And with both of those movies out of the way, as redundant as it may be, because I think it might show through which of these movies I prefer, I think it is time to discuss... So which movie's better? It's the question that I set out to answer when I started making this video, and it's the question that I would assume you wanted to hear answered when you clicked on this video. So which is it? Is it the movie that is very cold and calculating in how it handles its human characters, but has really incredible concept behind it and just amazing filmmaking to back it up? Or is it the movie that has a much more emotional aspect to it, but is not, it's more so like a very straightly played Godzilla movie where he just shows up and starts destroying shit? And the answer is that it's neither of them, because who fucking cares? Who cares which of these movies is better? I prefer Godzilla Minus One. You might prefer Shin Godzilla, and you're not wrong for that, right? I think it's so crazy that people will just come on platforms and pit two amazing things against each other and be like, well, which one is better? And then try to take the stance that one of those things is in fact better than the other one, when really, on an objective plane, from an objective state of, like, filmmaking, these movies are on the same level. These movies, in terms of objective filmmaking, I would argue are on the same level. They're pretty similarly shot. The score is done incredibly well. The performances are phenomenal. It's competently directed. The writing is incredibly tight. It's just which you prefer. Because, like I said at the very beginning of this video, these movies are two sides of the same coin. They're practically the same movie in terms of just how they handle Godzilla, right? Godzilla shows up, the characters deal with it. It just depends on who is dealing with it. And your preference between these two movies will ultimately come down to whether or not you prefer watching, like the deliberation and the plan come together, or you prefer to see the soul emerge from the very bottom of where it can be. I would argue that Godzilla Minus One actually does both of those really well, whereas Shin Godzilla only does one of them. But you might disagree with that, and that's okay. That's fine. It's okay to disagree with people on things. And I'm not going to come on here and act like I can be like, oh, this one is better than the other one. I'm not going to do that. Because ultimately, with film, and with anything, it comes down to what you prefer. And I just wish more people would realize that. I don't mean to just use this video as like a method to get up on my soapbox, but I think that hearing debate about these movies is ludicrous because they're both great and we can just appreciate both of them. Thank you for tuning into this really long video. This is the first video that I'm actually hacking together and editing myself. I hope you like the editing in this. If you did enjoy, please do remember to like and subscribe. My last video that I recorded of that homage to I Saw the TV Glow raked in over 400 views, and not a single one of you subscribed. Please do. It keeps me doing what I do because I love doing what I do. Ultimately, I will continue to do what I do whether you subscribe or not, but if you want other people to see my stuff and you want to support me because I want other people to see my stuff, please just like the video, subscribe. It's free. It takes you half a second to do, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.